Hi there, you're with BQ Prime, and this is the fine print. Plummeting valuation, unhappy investors, worried workforce. India's poster boy for EdTech, Byju's, is in serious trouble. Amid all this came the resignation of Byju's statutory auditor, Deloitte, who has said that the financial statements of the company for FY 2022 are long delayed. There's been no communication, Deloitte said, from the management on the resolution of the audit report modifications for FY21, and that the status of audit readiness underlying books and records for FY22 remains unclear. Soon after, Byju's announced the appointment of BDO as its statutory auditor for the next 5 years. On the fine print today, we are asking, what can BDO do that Deloitte couldn't? Joining me on the show are two senior voices from the audit fraternity, Amarjit Chopra and Santhanakrishnan. Gentlemen, welcome to the fine print. Mr. Chopra, I'll come to you first. Uh, Give me your first sort of broad comment on as you saw the developments unfold at Byju's before we get to the specifics of the audit process.
Thank you, Payaswini. Let me say that it is a very unfortunate situation to be in. That Deloitte are saying that so far as the modifications of 21 were concerned, there has been no action. And so far as 22 is concerned, the accounts have not been given to them, or the detailed information has not been given to them. It's unusual, and particularly we are in 23. 23 is already closed, if you really ask me. A company like Byju's, basically, which has, I don't know how, they contributed a huge amount to IPL as well as the Indian cricket team, very frankly, and they were brand ambassadors for some time, for that sort of brand ambassador for the Indian cricket team for some time. How that can, kind of a thing can happen in the case of that kind of a company. But it has happened, and Deloitte have resigned, and BDO have actually accepted the appointment for the next 5 years. And to me, that's a far more serious concern than anything else, that if one auditor resigns and the other jumps at it, basically to accept it, it's far more serious. Because we are not privy to the information. What kind of information was not provided to Deloitte, and what kind of qualifications were not acted upon for the financial year 21. So one may not be able to comment too much on that, but if Deloitte have resigned, one thing is sure, that some very critical information either was not provided to them, or the management was not agreeing to some kind of modifications for the year 22. And that forced Deloitte basically to resign. But I think the resignation, I will like to say one thing, is never a solution to the problem for that matter. Even if the information was not being provided, I think one could have gone ahead with some kind of disclaimers also and some kind of modifications to the report otherwise. But probably it has so much of impact or so much of adverse opinion being created about it, and Deloitte came to a conclusion that probably even forming an opinion, that they will not be able to give an opinion, so they had to resign. So, which is very, very dangerous for any kind of profession, and of course the company as well.
Sure. Santhanakrishnan, coming here, what did you make of the statement itself? It didn't give us any sort of details into what specific modifications that the statutory auditor and the company disagreed on. There have been several reports to indicate that the differences arose on account of, let's say, refunds, loan guarantees, unusual revenue recognition practices. Are these sort of normal differences that occur in the audit process? What was unusual here, or what could have been in terms of opinion, so polar apart that the auditor had to resign?
Good evening, and I entirely agree with Amarjit Chopra's statement that this resignation is something which is completely risky, and they are putting the investors into a total confusion, particularly when government doesn't step in at this point of time. Management itself appoints another leading brand, and they come and take over. It completely neutralizes the effect of resignation. First. Second is, I don't think these are very, very natural at all. In my opinion, if I may use probably not a very appropriate word, between the greed and the right one. I think the greed of doing business, greed of increasing the turnover, increasing the values, all this has contributed to accounting gimmicks. But from what I see is, it's a typical way of boosting up your revenue, boosting up your profits, camouflaging your interest payments, all that, if you could see from the paper reports, all that which normally occurs in inflation of revenue and inflation in terms of evaluation has exactly happened. It is a copybook fashion of, I can call it as cooking up the books. And what is surprising is, why should the resignation come 2 years later? The resignation should have come 1 year earlier. Every item in the revenue, as stated in the media, shows that conventional way of cooking up. Two, a sales-driven organization who confuses order to revenue. I think every order that was booked becomes a revenue in this company. That is what has posed the problem to the present position. I only feel sorry that the government has not decided to appoint somebody. In fact, it should have been a whistleblowing by Deloitte as to the reasons in public, and government should have taken steps and given 90 days time frame to resolve this issue. Otherwise, issue goes on, people continue to lose faith and continue to lose their money.
Sure. Mr. Chopra, we'll come to probably what the MCA could have done, what BDO now has to do. Can you take us through the process itself? Because, in terms of disagreements between the statutory auditor and management, how do these typically get resolved? And at what stage then the auditor just says that, look, I cannot get the management to see the point of view, and we cannot then sign off on these audits? If you could help us understand the process a little bit, so that then we can make sense of what really happened here.
You see, I would like you to be taken to certain standards on auditing. It starts with SS 700, 705, 706, and of course, with regard to the key audit matters and the other information under standard 720. But to me, what is more important is that whenever you come across certain practices, no, it is, if Deloitte says today that this is a practice of this year only, and the modifications were there even in 21, which the management has not acted upon. I think that Deloitte then in that particular case had a reason to resign even in 21 for that particular matter. Why only in 22? And that also resignation of 22 coming in 23 after the March is over. As SK said, I will fully agree with him. Why do you take 1 year to resign? Then what are the reasons that you are taking 1 year to resign? Are you trying?
Is it safe to assume that they were probably is it safe to assume that they were probably trying to get the management, to do the right thing, to maybe follow the accounting standards?
But Payaswini, management to agree taking more than 1 year, after all, they must have been looking at their accounts on a concurrent basis. If you really ask me, every quarter they must have been looking at those accounts also. Now, if quarter to quarter there was absolutely no improvement, in that case, I think one of the things which MC has said in the case of the resignation is that if you resign in the last quarter particularly, then you are supposed to complete the audit, and whatever report you have to issue, you issue. I will fully go with SK. You are putting the investors to an utter confusion as to what has actually happened. You either come out with a detailed letter as to what were the wrong accounting policies, what were the policies which you are trying to push up the revenue or push up the valuations, underbooking of the expenses, underbooking of the provisions, etc., etc. Whatever way you wanted to give, and what were the kind of guarantees which you are trying to challenge? Why should you issue a letter which should provide absolutely no information to the people concerned? I think there is no harm. If you are trying to blow a whistle and you are trying to resign, you should resign before. After all, this resignation has to be filed before the government also. And the government should have enacted. If you really ask me, if Deloitte had raised this issue much earlier, the government should have enacted and appointed someone on their own. Why not? I personally feel if this is the kind
So
of
there is
situation.
yeah. So just one quick question to your point on, I want to belabor over what Deloitte could have done.
Yeah.
What does the law require Deloitte or any other audit firm to do if they can't get the management to do the modifications that as a statutory auditor you're asking? That is one. Is there any requirement under the law to say that before you resign, you should sort of issue a report and give details? Because let's also remember, this is not a listed company. So I'm not sure if there is a difference between, a publicly listed company versus a Byju's, where probably they could have explained to the board and they need not make it public to the, their sort of concerns with regards to the financials. And two, if the management doesn't share the data with an auditor or doesn't do the modifications that it's required to do, isn't the auditor rendered helpless?
Let me first answer your first question, which you had raised very frankly. What happens is that whenever you come across some of these kind of practices, you write to the people who are charged with the governance under SA 260 for that particular matter. And those people have to take cognizance of that. And when you write to them, they must, and I think you have to present it before the audit committee in any case as to what are your differences of opinion. And then the audit committee has to act in the matter and to try to reconcile the two situations under those circumstances. And ultimately, it is the management and the auditor to sit down and resolve those issues, basically. Now, if the auditor comes to a conclusion that these are absolutely wrong, horrendous kind of accounting policies, you qualify the report. You issue a modified report. Give this impact of that particular wrong accounting policy, whatever is being chosen. And that is as per the standard, basically, because you have to quantify and then say what is going to be its impact on the total financial position and also on the profitability of the organization. You can't leave it in lurch. And as you said, that it is not a listed entity, it's not a public interest entity. I have a very huge difference of opinion on this particular point, in general, basically. You see, what is public interest? Even government losing the revenue is a public interest. The debtors or the creditors or the staff getting unemployed, basically, you see the kind of situation which has happened in Byju's over a particular period of time, laying off of the labor, etc. Now, that's also public interest, particular point. Why should we say only when the public has invested in a particular company as a public interest company? I think the public interest is a much larger term, and the government must come in action at a given point of time. Now, in this particular case, the company kept on doing certain things. This tussle was on between the auditor and the management for that particular matter. When I said tussle, I think the dialogue was on, which was never resolved. Then, when the Deloitte basically issued the resignation, they should have been told that you complete your audit for 22, and whatever has to happen for 23, that will happen in that particular case. Now, this is one thing which MCA has been saying in the case of the listed entities, and SEBI has been saying you can't resign in the last quarter under any circumstances. And if you can't apply the same principle here, a company which gives thousands of crores or hundreds of crores to the cricket team of India, I think you can't say that it is not a public interest entity for that matter. There's no way that you can say this. And it has its own ramifications.
My limited point, Mr. Chopra, here is because most sort of responses come to you to say this is what we're required to do versus not required to do under law. I get that you are emphasizing the point that
I think there's something called ethics. There's something called ethics.
Yeah.
And ethics is much wider than law. Ethics is much wider than law. You can't keep on following certain unethical practices all over the years. You kept on agreeing to certain policies in one of the years or in more than one of the years. You kept on issuing modified reports in those years. And today you say that you can't issue the modified reports in the same form. I don't mind you are saying it, but then say it at the beginning of the year. You can't say it 1 year after the end of the year for that matter. That's my basic question.
In fact,
Santhanakrishnan, coming here, what would you have ideally liked Deloitte to do, given that they've said that they disagreed with the management on several sort of aspects of accounting practices, etc. What would have a report which would have given probably investors more insight, the larger public more insight? What would have that report looked like?
The profession would have been in glorious light if only we had done two things. The Deloitte of 31st March 2021 has qualified its report by saying parent and subsidiary companies have not maintained adequate financial controls. Certain material weaknesses exist, including revenue recognition, collection, determination. Recording of customer-wise details of collections may result in inadequate provision. It has said all that to say that the accounts are not reliable in the year 21. They should have continued with 22. They should have done the audit, made a complete disclaimer, and they should have given a reason why they are disclaiming anything about this company, would have clearly brought out the issues, and the new auditor would have to address that to take it up. The people at large, which in my opinion also, I entirely agree with Amarjit, that public interest is every financial statement is prepared, not just public interest, or it is a uniform standard, whether public are interested or not interested. The quality of the financial statement to be good, it should have done it, and it should have made public why they are resigning. Mere resignation letter saying we are resigning, management has not given us, is not the issue. They could have even given a disclaimer of opinion, and they could have said these are the reasons why we are unable to do it. Then it would have brought everything to light, and it would have been easier for the government to take action. Now you're only leading them to further questioning, which as a profession, I think we should avoid it.
All right. Then let me come to Mr. Chopra, the appointment of BDO. It's a question both, for the profession, BDO and the company, that what is it that your previous statutory auditor couldn't do, didn't do, that a fresh auditor will? And what is now the starting point for BDO? They've been appointed for this financial year, but last year's financials have not been signed on or filed. So where does BDO sort of pick up the audit for Byju's now?
Number one, Payaswini, let me correct you and SEBI and everyone and the company itself. There is no firm like BDO in India. They are not registered in India. It is MSKA, which is using the network of BDO. So I think rather it's a case which ICAI must take up. How a company can file a statement before SEBI that we have appointed BDO? They have not appointed BDO. Let's be very clear about it. BDO is not a registered entity in India under any circumstances. This statement is absolutely wrong. That is the first point. That's first thing I will. So not so SEBI with the government, wherever the statement has gone.
With the MCA, okay.
MCA. That is one thing that one will like to say. And sorry for using the word SEBI with the MCA. And they have come up with a public statement basically that we have appointed BDO. I think the company has to be acted against. Where is BDO registered in India? Tell us. I think I will like to.
We all know how these networks work.
No, but no, it's not. It's absolutely. I think our members have also to be proceeded against in that particular case. Why not? The company should have said that we are a part of the network of BDO, but we are not BDO. I think that's the one thing that I'm very critical about. And the other thing that one would like to say is, I fail to understand, and this is SK referred to the greed of the business. I think it's the greed of profession also, somewhere or the other. If Deloitte resigned on certain grounds, and those grounds are pertaining to 22, if the Deloitte could not obtain the information, how BDO is going to, how MSK is going to obtain the information, I don't know. Basically, how the new auditor will obtain the information. It's a very difficult question. Or is it the fact now that the new auditor will issue a disclaimer altogether? And if they are going to issue a disclaimer, that further strengthens our case, whatever me and SK is saying, that they should, even Deloitte could have come up with the disclaimer with regard to 22. After all, they will have to first complete 22 and then only come to 23. They can't leave the opening balances in lurch under any circumstances. And the second thing that one will like to say is that there's something called due diligence of a client. know your customer, know your client for that particular matter. KYC has to be done. And if the KYC of the client is that in 21 they didn't provide the information with regard to their subsidiaries or associates or anyone else, the internal control systems are horrible in those particular cases, and that's the report in the public domain so far as Deloitte are concerned. How it's going to be rectified today when Deloitte has just resigned and said that nothing has happened in this particular year? Then I think again the new auditor will have to issue a disclaimer. There is nothing else that can be done under these circumstances. And then the same thing could have been done by the Deloitte also. I personally feel very sad about this profession today. That one auditor resigns and the other is willing to accept it immediately. I personally feel it is for the MCA to appoint some agency, to appoint some committee to look into what were the grounds under which Deloitte resigned. And this is one of my suggestions. Wherever an auditor resigns, you can put a threshold limit in either in terms of the paid up capital or in terms of the indebtedness or in terms of the turnover, etc. Wherever an auditor of that particular organization resigns, I think the MCA must step in immediately, or if it's a listed entity, the SEBI must step in immediately. Within 1 month, you issue a report as to what has actually happened. And then only some kind of an auditor should either accept the appointment or should be appointed as an auditor by the concerned agency. This entire business of someone jumping at really accepting the assignment, and it has happened in few other assignments also. Some other new auditors have accepted the assignment where they should have not accepted those appointments. Particularly, I think this is a sad part, very frankly, and it's a sad reflection on the profession as a whole, and probably institute needs to look into it also. Why it has happened, and why, and I think all those financial statements, and why KYC, after all, it's a part of my standard, it's a part of my diligence process. That in the case of a new client, I'm supposed to do all due diligence, whether I should carry on that particular part, and that's a part of my code of conduct also. Why should be ignored?
Santhanakrishnan, come in here. Like I put that question to Mr. Chopra as well. All the work that Deloitte did for FY22, does BDO sort of look at that at all? Or it starts a fresh audit with fresh data? What do the sort of standards require, and what is the practice when it comes to you picking up from another auditor?
I think it's important for them to start the audit all over again. They are supposed to communicate with the previous auditor, but invariably he doesn't tell you everything. In fact, I believe that now there should be an audit of reason for resignation first, which have they really come out with their duty? Because you have a duty and a responsibility to the public to tell them why you resign. You cannot be very nice and nice about it and saying we're doing it for this reason. Under that, there could be several other reasons. So in my opinion, generally, the auditors will not share the working papers, will not disclose the real reason. They may have to do it all over again, and they may have to go by the media reports, and they may have to do their own study.
So whatever work Deloitte did for FY22, Mr. Chopra, for Byju, that's not relevant anymore? Or the modifications?
It can be relevant from the investigative agency point of view. If at all there are investigations or inspections by the MCA, it can be very relevant.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, there are reports again that MCA has issued notice. Again, I mean, like you said earlier, BDO should ideally sort of communicate with Deloitte and ask those questions. We don't know if that will happen. The company, of course, has denied that they've not received any investigation or inspection notice from the MCA. If, let's say, MCA does decide to look into it, which we're sort of not sure it currently is planning to, how will that run parallel to now this new auditor coming in?
Number one, I will feel very sad if MCA has not issued any inspection notice so far. We all have been saying that certain processes at ICAI level are slow. I think if MCA has not done it so far, then I think MCA has to take the blame for it if they have not done it. MCA should have done it, And if they have not done it, they should do it with immediate effect for that matter. And they have to call, I think, work papers of Deloitte as to on what grounds you came to certain conclusions and you resigned. And as SK said, that probably the new auditor will write to, I will not use the word video. You have been using the word video still. I will not use the word video. The new auditor will step in, and the new auditor will step in and will write to the previous auditor seeking is no objection for that matter. Even in the case, because to me, at times the people feel if the earlier auditor has resigned, why should I write to the previous auditor? After all, he has resigned. Rather, at that particular point of time, the ethics require you should write far more. The reason being, you have to know the reasons why and somebody resigned. Today, who resigns from an audit? Basically, there must have been compelling reasons for somebody to resign, and must try to seek the reasons of his resignation. I think that's very important from the viewpoint of the new auditor. So
Sure.
my perception is that probably the new auditor will do this particular job more discreetly, and MCA has to act in the matter, and the work of Deloitte should be utilized by the inspection team of MCA. Whatever work Deloitte has done, that work paper should be called for, and on whatever points the differences were there, they should be looked into whether the auditors were right or the management was right. I personally feel the auditors were right, if you really ask me today. Because otherwise the Deloitte would not have resigned in those circumstances. So
Yeah.
my own hunch is that somewhere or the other, the work of Deloitte will not go waste. From inspection.
To add a point, Amarjit, just to add a point, I think NAFRA, it's a very good case for NAFRA to take over.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, does NFRA have a role to play here?
Yeah. Thank you.
NFRA definitely has a role to play.
NFRA will have a full role to play. It's a wonderful case, a sample case for NAFRA to enter and look at the accounting side. NAFRA has always been looking at the auditors. As the high time that NAFRA starts looking at the accountant side of do it. NAFRA has got both the roles to look at the accountants as well as the auditors. Up to now, they have been doing only with the auditors. It's time for them to look at the accountants as well as the auditors in this case. It need not even wait for MCA's notice. It can do on its own so moto.
Actually, SK, I have been raising a voice through various forums that why only auditors? Why not the directors? Why not the CFOs who prepare the accounts? Ultimately, the auditors are presented the accounts, what have been prepared by the management. And you leave the directors alone. Why? No way. I think the directors and the CFO, the preparers of the accounts, have to be acted against by the government. I think that's more important.
Absolutely.
A lot should be done, as both of you have pointed out clearly, by the MCA, by the NFRA, and the new auditor. Not sure how much of this will happen. Not sure again how much of this will get disclosed, because Byju is not a listed company. But the hope is that BDO picks up from where Deloitte left, writes, or rather MSK writes to Deloitte, gets those working papers.
I don't wish that BDO or this new auditor picks up from
MSK,
where
the new
Deloitte
auditor, right?
The new auditor will have to
former
start all over
auditor.
again.
Communicates with the former auditor, and we get a clean set of financials for a company that was supposed to be the hero for the edtech sector in India. Santhanakrishnan, Mr. Chopra, many thanks for joining us with your candid views here on the fine print, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.